My late husband's parents, who favored his brother all his life, show up at his funeral, then have the audacity to demand his business and our home. I, 44 female, recently lost my husband, 48. We had been together for 20 years, married for 12, and 5 years ago he had been diagnosed with leukemia. A few weeks back he passed away. Honestly, I have made my peace with it. I know that I'm going to miss him terribly and my life is never going to be the same again. I highly doubt that I will ever be able to love somebody as much as I loved him, but he's in a better place now, and he was really sick the last few months of his life, so I'm just relieved that he is finally at ease now. Anyway, last week we finally had a funeral service for him. I was not expecting his parents to show up because they have not had the best relationship with him and for the last 8 years had not even been on speaking terms with each other. My husband had walked out on his family and sworn that he was never going to speak to them again, and for good reason if I'm being honest. You see, my in-laws are the kind of people who had a golden child and they never even bothered to hide it from my husband. My husband's older brother, 50 male, my brother-in-law Jack, is a no-good deadbeat alcoholic and has always been that way. But for some reason, his parents have always preferred him over my husband no matter what he did. In spite of that, my husband tried his best to be there for his parents and his brother. He was a family man through and through, but they never valued him. When we started dating, I started noticing how differently they were treated in their home. I spoke to my husband about it several times and told him to stand up for himself, but he told me that this was his family and he didn't want to be anything but kind to them. So no matter how they behaved, he was just too nice for his own good. But after he started dating me, he started taking less of their BS, and instead of just being a doormat for them, he would actually occasionally stand up for himself because I would keep reminding him that if they were treating him this badly, then this was not the kind of family that he needed in his life. By the time we had completed 3 years together, he had no tolerance for his family's behavior and wouldn't enter the way that they treated him. That led to friction between them because they were so used to walking all over him that they couldn't believe this new version of him, and they realized that I might have been a part of this since he had started changing ever since he had met me. So they tried to brainwash my husband into leaving me, but it didn't work and it only made our relationship even stronger. So suffice it to say, my in-laws and I have never gotten along and have always been at odds. Except I have been on the right side of things and they have never been anything but horrible to us. And so when they actually showed up at the funeral with Jack, I was pretty surprised because the last time that we had interacted, my husband and I had walked out after a really nasty fight and it had not been pretty. After my husband and I got married, we had been trying to distance ourselves from my in-laws anyway, so it's not like we had a good relationship at that point in time. But they invited us for Christmas dinner and we had attended out of courtesy. However, when we got there, we realized that we had made a huge mistake because all they did at that party was talk about how my husband's new business was not going to do well and it was doomed to failure. So after the party, we confronted his parents about it and they said that they were just helping him realize that this was not the right thing to do and that he should just stop copying his brother, because apparently even Jack had started a similar business. But that had happened after my husband had announced his. For context, we work with plastic products and recycling. We had actually researched the market and we knew what we were doing, unlike Jack. So that ended up in a huge fight and we walked out after deciding that we were never going to speak to them again. Obviously, Jack's business did not take off because he did not have the sort of acumen that my husband had, and also because he hadn't done any hard work of his own and was just expecting to piggyback off of my husband's efforts. Anyway, it has been 8 years since then and they never bothered to get in touch with us ever again. Even when my husband was diagnosed, and I'm pretty sure that they knew about it, they did not speak to us, and when he was at the hospital, they never visited us either. Showing up at the funeral was a surprising move from them. I didn't pay any attention to them throughout the entire service and they only approached me after it was over. They tried to speak to me nicely, but I was not going to buy that. I kept a straight face and I told them that they were welcome to offer condolences, but then they would have to leave because I was not interested in interacting with them. I didn't even wish to interact with them when my husband was alive, so now that he was gone, I had even less incentive to speak to them and I made that very clear. So they dropped their act as well and his parents told me that they needed to speak to me in private. I told them that they would need to wait until everyone had left because otherwise I would not have enough time to speak to them. I was very curious as to what they wanted to talk to me about. After everyone had left, I spoke to them outside the venue. Jack did not wait around and left along with everybody else, so it was just my in-laws and I having a conversation. They told me that they had fought about visiting my husband when he was in the hospital, but ultimately they decided against it because he was already pretty sick and they did not want to bother him even more. It was a really lame and silly excuse for not visiting their son when he was literally on his deathbed, but I did not expect any better from them either. I just told them that I did not need any justification for what they had done and they needed to come straight to the point because I had had a long day and I didn't want to waste more of my time with them. They seemed pretty upset when I spoke to them in that tone, but that's what they deserved. Anyway, they told me that they were here because they wanted to say goodbye to their son one last time and they also wanted to speak to me about whatever he had left behind. Now everybody knew that I was going to take over the business after him. It might have been his idea, but I had been with him every step of the way for the execution and everything, so that was naturally going to be mine, and we had the paperwork sorted out too. So as soon as they brought it up, I made it clear to them that they had no chance at that. His terms had been very clear right from the beginning. He had made sure to get all of these legal formalities in order as soon as he had been diagnosed. I knew that they had probably been expecting to speak to me about it so they could somehow get Jack in on the business, but I was not going to allow that. Then after a brief pause, they told me that since they couldn't have the business, they wanted me to at least leave the property to them. And by the property they meant the home that we had put so much effort into designing. They wanted it for themselves because they believed that his family needed it more since we did not have any kids. It's not like I needed that entire house to myself because it was a pretty spacious place, and they claimed that they were sick of living in their own home and needed a change of scenery. So they planned on living on our property and putting their own house up for rent for an extra source of income. I was shocked that they were even suggesting this because after not speaking to somebody for 8 years, you don't just show up at their funeral and ask their widow to let you have the house that they had built for themselves. I lost my temper. I was already pretty miserable and so I yelled at them to get out because I literally couldn't stand to see them. I had already been pretty annoyed at them and I guess they had been pretty upset with me too because I had already told them off twice before. So when I started yelling at them, they started yelling right back and said that they were just here for peace, but I was being a total jerk and they did not appreciate that. They then played the age card, saying that I did not know how to respect the elderly. I hit right back, saying that they did not even know how to respect the dead since my husband had barely been buried and they were already here circling like vultures. They made it worse by saying that since I had refused when they had asked me politely, they were going to make sure that they sued and got the property for themselves. Just to be clear, my husband had clearly stated in his will that everything that he had was going to go to me. So I don't even know why they thought that threat to sue me was going to be a good idea, since I think my husband was pretty clear. I told them that they were never going to win even if they decided to sue me, and they said that it was my fault that their son had not spoken to them for the past 8 years and hadn't been able to reconcile with them, which doesn't even make sense. They thought that I had brainwashed him to turn against them, so they were going to make sure that I got nothing out of him. I just told them to leave and when they finally left, I drove back home as well. I was really pissed off at the time and I hadn't been thinking straight, so I had completely forgotten about this particular video that my husband had asked me to play for his parents if they bothered to show up at his funeral. It had totally slipped my mind and I only remembered it after I had come back home. I'll come to the content of the video later. So, after all of that happened, after I showed them the video, they threw their tantrum, and I walked out. I decided I needed to start mentally closing this chapter for my own sake. I had already been through so much. Losing my husband was the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with, and then to be ambushed like that by the very people who made his life hell was just too much. I wasn't going to allow them to hijack my grief or disturb my peace. But of course, it didn't stop there. A week after I played them the video, I got a letter from a lawyer. I knew instantly who it was from, and honestly, I wasn't even surprised. Like I had predicted, they were trying to sue. The letter claimed that I had manipulated their son into cutting them off and tricked him into leaving everything to me. They were now challenging the will and trying to prove that I had undue influence over my husband in his final days. It was insulting, honestly. To suggest that I had somehow coerced a dying man, who had full mental clarity, who had already been at odds with them for years before he was even diagnosed, is just a disgusting low blow. They were so desperate to cling to whatever narrative made them feel less responsible for the damage they'd caused in their own relationship with their son. And I could see right through it. Thankfully, I was prepared. My husband and I had gone through every legal channel imaginable. We'd had everything notarized, had independent witnesses, and his medical records clearly stated he was mentally competent when the will was updated. There were even recordings, apart from the one I showed them, where he clearly stated his intentions about the business, the house, and everything else. His lawyer had copies of all of them. When my attorney responded to theirs with the paperwork, the recordings, and everything else, I expected them to drop it. But no, these people are persistent. They actually tried to argue that I had controlled his medical decisions too and tried dragging that into the conversation, as if I hadn't spent the last few years trying to keep him alive and comfortable while they couldn't even be bothered to make a phone call. I wasn't about to let this slide quietly. If they wanted a fight, they were going to get one. I started preparing every piece of documentation I could find: photos, receipts, messages, records. I was ready to go to court and let a judge see exactly who had been there for my husband and who had not. And while all of this was going on, guess who suddenly reached out? Jack. Yep, out of nowhere I get a call from an unknown number, and when I answered, it was him. He started off all calm and friendly, saying he just wanted to talk, and that he wasn't taking sides, which was total BS because he'd clearly been waiting for his chance to pounce, too. He asked if we could meet up somewhere to discuss things like adults, and I flat out told him no. I wasn't going to let any of them manipulate their way into my life again. I told him that if he wanted anything, he could talk to my lawyer because I wasn't going to entertain whatever games they were trying to play. He tried to act all hurt and said I was being unreasonable, and that my husband wouldn't have wanted things to be like this. That was rich, coming from the guy who barely even acknowledged his brother unless he needed something. I reminded him that my husband did want things to be this way. He had said so, in writing and on video, and that the only reason we were in this situation was because they never took the time to mend the damage when they still had the chance. He hung up after calling me a few names I won't even repeat. So, that's where I'm at now. Still going through the legal process, still waiting to see how far they're willing to go. My lawyer says they don't have a leg to stand on, but that doesn't stop them from wasting everyone's time. Honestly, I think they're just doing it out of spite now, trying to wear me down emotionally. But I've come too far, and I'm not going to cave in. I just keep reminding myself, I know what my husband wanted. I know what we built together. And I know the truth about who was really there for him. If they think they can take that away with some half-baked lawsuit or emotionally manipulative tactics, they're in for a rude awakening. Let them try. I've already lost the love of my life. There's nothing more they can take from me. Update 1. Hey, I would just like to say thank you so much, you guys, for all the support that you've shown me in the comments section of the original post. Dealing with the loss of a loved one is never easy, especially when it's somebody like my husband. He was a really sweet and gentle soul, and I'm going to miss him every day for the rest of my life. So, it hurts when people call him names, especially knowing that I already miss him and he's no longer in this world. I don't understand what the point of calling him a doormat for his parents, a pushover, and names like that was. He's gone. He's not even going to be able to read that. The person who will read that, though, is me. And I'm already really hurt and miserable over losing him. I don't need to hear everyone's negative thoughts about him on top of that. I know everybody is entitled to their own opinion, but speaking ill of the dead, that's just not nice. So I don't appreciate it, and I would really like it if you guys wouldn't say such things about him anymore. Apart from that, thank you so much to everyone who has been supportive of me. Anyway, it's been a week since I visited my in-laws, and they haven't reached out to me since. When I left their house that day, they were very pissed off and were accusing me of all sorts of crazy things, like trying to hurt them on purpose or intimidate them into backing off from filing lawsuits against me or contesting the will. I mean, if they want to do that, they're welcome to. It's just going to be a waste of their time and money because I highly doubt they'll be able to get anything out of this. But hey, if they want to go ahead in spite of the video, they can. By all means. Who am I to stop them? I've kept myself pretty busy since then, so I don't have to think about any of this too much. I'm just trying to focus on work right now, because I have to put my grief aside and think about the more practical aspects of life as well. I'm just lucky that I have really supportive parents. They've been living with me for the past couple of days. I was really tired after coming back home from work, and they just took over all the household duties. My father is still going to work, but he told me he's going to take care of all the things my husband used to do, like paying the bills and getting groceries, since I've always been kind of forgetful. My mom's handling the cooking and cleaning. We did have a housekeeper, but she quit for some personal reasons, which I had been telling my parents about a couple of days ago, and the very next day, they showed up at my house with their stuff. That was really sweet of them, and I'm so thankful that people are taking such good care of me right now. Update 2. So, my in-laws have officially decided to contest the will. My husband's lawyer spoke to me about it, and honestly, we're not too worried about what's going to happen with that. They are going to lose, we already know that. What was really surprising, though, was that they sent out an email to me, basically saying that my strategy of trying to scare them off with that video wasn't going to work. According to them, they were going to get what was rightfully theirs. They said my husband was their flesh and blood before he was my husband, so they were more entitled to whatever he had built for himself. Not only that, but they also mentioned they were coming for the property and they were going to try to get shares of the business as well, because they felt like they deserved it. Thankfully for me, courts don't function on the basis of what people feel. So they can feel like they're entitled to the whole world, but that's not going to help their case. Anyway, that email is going to come in handy, so I've saved it and already sent it over to my lawyer. I'm still living with my parents, and they have continued being incredibly helpful and supportive. They even offered to speak to my in-laws directly and try to reach a peaceful conclusion, thinking that maybe my in-laws would be more willing to listen to them. But I told them that it's not necessary. I actually want my in-laws to go ahead with the lawsuit. Why? Because I know it's going to be a colossal waste of their time and money. And that's exactly what I intend to do, let them waste both. People have been dropping by quite frequently over the past couple of weeks, either to check on me or to offer their condolences, since some couldn't make it to the service. Between handling work and having guests over, I've barely had any time to actually think about what I'm going through or process my feelings. But a couple of days ago, I found myself in my husband's office looking for some papers related to work, and I almost broke down. I just missed him so much. I could see him there. I could envision him in that space like he had never left. I just wish I could speak to him one more time. I wish I could let him know how much I love him and how much I miss him right now. But I know I can't. So, I just think about it and try to let it go. Right now, my only goal is to make sure that our business does well. I know he would have loved that. He wanted us to be successful, he had such big dreams and ambitions, and that has given me the motivation I need to work really hard. So, I'm doing exactly that. Update 3. Hi. It's been 2 weeks since my in-laws contested the will, and so far, they have absolutely nothing. But something very unexpected happened yesterday. Jack messaged me. I was so surprised. He and I have never had anything to talk about, and considering what his parents are currently doing, I found it quite bold that he'd reach out to me. We've never been close, and we're definitely not on casual texting terms. Honestly, I hadn't even blocked him because I didn't have his number to begin with. When he texted me, he said he wanted to talk and asked if he could come over to my house. My first instinct was to say no and block him, but something told me not to. I had a gut feeling that this was something worth hearing. Besides, if he was reaching out now, I figured it probably had something to do with his parents anyway. So, I agreed to meet him. My parents were going to be at home, so I felt comfortable having him over. When he finally came by, he brought flowers and offered his condolences. He said he hadn't been able to say anything at the funeral because I had been busy dealing with his parents, but he really wanted me to know that he was sorry for my loss. It was surprisingly sweet. I didn't know what to say, honestly. This was not the Jack I remembered. Every time we'd interacted at his parents' place in the past, he always came off as loud, arrogant, and frankly, kind of obnoxious. But this person standing in front of me was nothing like that. He didn't even reek of alcohol like he used to years ago. It looked like he'd cleaned himself up. After a little small talk, he got to the point. He said he came over because he wanted to warn me. His parents were planning to defame me. They were going to spread lies that my husband had borrowed money from them to start his business, and now that he was gone, I was refusing to pay them back. It was a complete lie. There was no contract, no written agreement, nothing. They knew they couldn't come after me legally, so they were planning to try social media instead. It's a ridiculous plan, and I honestly don't know how they thought it would work. But I was really thankful that Jack had come to me and told me about it. Now, I could nip this in the bud before it spiraled. Jack told me that over the past couple of years, he had been trying to become a better person. He'd even wanted to reach out to us a few times, but after everything he had done to his brother, he just didn't have the courage. And now that it was too late, he was here to say he was sorry for everything. Then he actually started crying. I didn't know what to do, but thankfully, my father stepped in. He comforted him, made him a cup of tea, and helped him calm down. Before Jack left, I told him that everything was going to be okay, and I was sure his brother would have appreciated what he did today. That seemed to make him feel a little better. I think I did the right thing. Even if he came around too late, at least he did come around. That's more than I can say for others, like his parents. Honestly, I don't even blame him completely. His parents failed both of their children. They thought they were doing Jack a favor by treating him like the golden child, but all they really did was spoil him rotten. In the end, they didn't do right by either of their sons. It just makes me sad. They both deserved better parents, and better lives. Final update. Hi. So, I spoke to my lawyer and told him everything Jack had said to me. After some discussion, we decided not to take any immediate action. Instead, we would wait them out, let them go ahead and make the posts. That way, we'd have actual proof to use against them in court. I also spoke to Jack again, and he confirmed that he was willing to testify against his parents if it came to that. So with that assurance, everything was more or less sorted on our end. A couple of days ago, they finally did it. They made the post on social media. The moment I saw it, I wrote them an email. I told them if they didn't take it down immediately, we would be pursuing this legally and would be filing a defamation lawsuit. To be honest, I was kind of counting on them to be stubborn and refuse to remove it, but I guess they realized this was a losing battle. It probably didn't help their case when I mentioned that Jack was on our side. That alone probably sealed the deal for them. They took the post down almost immediately. But of course, they still tried to act tough, saying they were still going to take everything away from me. At this point, it's just boring. So I wished them good luck and blocked their email address. Now they're free to do whatever they want. I genuinely wish them luck. They're going to need a lot of it. Especially since the only person they could have counted on, Jack, is no longer on their side. They're completely on their own now. And honestly, I'd love to see how they plan to deal with that.